Welcome to the Basic Bee podcast, a show for the wannabe SEO savvy service providers among us, for the coaches and consultants who dream of becoming known for their storytelling skills, not to mention the solopreneurs who straight up need to master all things social proof to increase sales. After a little reluctantly fully committing to this online world of business, I quickly realized I needed to get people to come to me. I needed to tell them I was here and how I could support them. I dove headfirst into social proof, which led me to SEO, which led me to storytelling. And now it gives me great joy to share what I've learned with other business owners so they skip the hard stuff and ease straight into sales. This podcast gives you expert insights, actionable takeaways, and casual convos with some of the online world's best and brightest experts and strategists. I think that's enough of an intro, so here we go. Welcome back to the Basic Bee podcast. I'm so excited that you're tuning in, whether that's on YouTube or any of the podcast players, because there's like 1,000 now. I really appreciate you being here, and you're in for a good conversation, one that I have been pushing for a while now. So I'm joined by Rosa Sarmento, and we are going to be talking about 2024 podcast predictions, which I'm literally just so stoked about. So quick intro for you so you can actually meet Rosa. Rosa supports women-led online businesses that desire to scale their impact and income with a podcast. She's the founder of Idea Blossoms, a boutique podcast agency that has launched top-rated podcasts and produced over 800 podcast episodes. She was born and raised in Rio, Brazil, but now lives the expat lifestyle in Mexico with her husband. Hi, Rosa.
Hi. Thank you for the intro. I always blush when people are in my intro.
I know, right? Except you've got the tan and I'm really pasty over here. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I've been getting some sun down here in Brazil. A little too much. I'm peeling a little bit on my arm.
No, that's the life I live. I think it's my German blood. We stay away from the sun. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm stoked to have you here to talk about this topic. But before we do, I'm going to ask you the one question I ask all my guests. Don't worry, it's a loaded one, but there are no wrong answers.
Okay.
All right, you ready? Which do you believe is most important for sales? SEO, storytelling, or social proof, and why?
I think, especially when you mention all of those together, for me, the first word that comes to mind is authenticity, especially when it comes to sales. It's so easy to get pushed around with all these marketing trends and quote unquote best practices, because some people won't see my air quotes that I'm doing with my finger.
I know. Let them be known.
Yeah, let them be known. So many shoulds, so many quote unquote best practices out there, and tactics and strategies and you name it. And then I think when it comes to, storytelling, especially when you tie storytelling to SEO, to social proof, to sales, it has to be authentic to work, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like that's where a lot of people kind of get lost. Not that they do it on purpose. I feel like a lot of them don't. And it's not that they mean anything bad. It's just all the information. It's a load of information out there. And it's very, very easy to let go of your true self or your values or beliefs or even your real story to, put up this front that you believe is the right thing to do.
Yeah. So it sounds like you kind of believe all three, but just making sure that you're being authentic throughout everything. Is that right?
Yeah.
I love that. No one has brought that up yet. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. So let's dive in to your 2024 podcast predictions. And you have 3, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm thinking you want to just take them one at a time and we can chat through them a little bit.
Yeah. I'll share all 3 because I don't like suspense.
Okay.
And then I'll break them down. So if you're interested, stick with me.
Perfect.
So my big 3 predictions for podcasting, they came from the first few weeks of 2024. I was just consuming a lot of content from the industry. Everyone was putting out their predictions and talking and discussing things. And I was really drawn to it. Some things I agreed on, some things not so much. And then I wanted to, you know what? Let me try to do my own predictions. And then at the end of the year, we'll see how I did.
Yeah.
So my big 3 are, first and foremost, focusing more on the quality of listener than the number of listeners. Number 2 is prioritizing your audio quality and video quality if you do video podcasting. And finally, number 3, which probably everyone's talking about right now, artificial intelligence as a tool to not just repurpose, because a lot of people are already using it to repurpose podcasts, help write show notes and content, things like that. But taking a step further and using it to produce the podcast as well. And I'll go into more detail later. But where do you want to start? Number one?
I mean, that last one is spicy, but let's start with number one.
Yeah.
Let's start with number one. So the focus on the quality, the type of listener versus the number of listeners, which I think is very interesting and you don't hear very often. So how did that come about?
That came from a conversation with a client, really. She was reflecting a lot on her podcast at the end of the year. She wanted to take this new direction, and we were discussing things. And finally, we came to an agreement that the type of listener was way more important than the number of listeners that she was bringing in, because of the type of work she does and what she's trying to accomplish with the podcast. Because you also have to take this with a grain of salt. Like if you are like a news podcast, for instance, I would say number of listeners is definitely important. You want to reach out to people, right? You want to get that visibility. If you are a podcaster that's searching for sponsors and partnership deals, then yes, number of listeners is going to be crucial. I'm not going to lie here. But if you're a branded podcast and you work in this niche, and it's a very specific niche, and the podcast is part of that business, part of that thing you teach, it's not really about the numbers. It's about finding those right listeners, those ideal listeners, right? That will turn into fans and maybe even recurring clients. I think that's the end goal here with branded podcasts, again, not going viral. Because going viral, you can do it.
Yeah, that's a really good point to focus on too, because like you said, it kind of seems like it's starting with the goal in mind. So what's your goal with the podcast? If it is sponsorships, yeah, they're going to be looking for the number of listeners. Just like if you're looking for a book deal, they're going to be looking for the number of followers that you have. So that is really important to be aware of. Where are you taking this thing? What do you want to do with it? I mean, that was one of the first things I thought about when I started this podcast is like, okay, I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be putting time and effort and energy and money into it. What do I want it to do for me?
Yeah.
So I really like that you brought that point up. Okay, what is your next prediction? Well, more of like why it is a thing, I guess I should say, about like the audio quality. I'm really excited to get into this one.
Okay, good. You can geek out with me here because I don't know. I don't think a lot of people like this topic. If I have to be honest.
I used to not to.
But I do. So we'll try. Well, this is something, it's really not a prediction. If I say it's a prediction, it would be false because this is a conversation that's been happening in the industry for a couple of years. In the very early years of podcasting, it was very common for you to bump into podcasters that were very much like amateur produced, again, quote unquote, amateur produced, really just like one person, maybe two people hanging out on a couch, recording on their phones, whatever. And that was kind of the vibe. It was something everyone was experimenting with, seeing, how they felt doing it, how the response was. So it was actually okay. But once the industry started evolving and listeners start getting more exposed to, different types of podcast production, editing styles, there is a certain level of quality you expect. You have to be honest here. And me as a listener, because I am also a podcast listener, there are certain things that really turn me off when I'm listening to a podcast because it's just too distracting. There's no video. There's no other thing to engage. It's just audio. So it has to be good. And I'm not saying it has to be perfect. I'm not saying you have to work with a producer. That's not my point. I just think people can be more mindful of the quality of the audio. And it's really easy. Like I have 3 tips. They're like the big tips if you want.
Yes, tell us because that's where I was going to go.
Yeah. Because like I know I can talk about it, but then people are like, okay, yeah, but what do I do?
Help us. Yeah, exactly. So what are those tips?
One thing, make sure you're in a place, quiet room, obviously that goes without saying, but in a room that has soft surfaces and many different soft surfaces, not just like a rug. But if there are curtains and a rug and pillows, and if you don't just literally grab pillows and put like next to the microphone, it helps a lot. I've done that a few times when I was like in Airbnbs.
Yeah.
Works like a charm.
Oh, that's good to know.
To get rid of that echo.
Yeah.
Because echo can get really bad if you're like in a square room, especially. It will definitely ruin the recording. And that's something you can't edit. You can't get rid of it. So that's the first thing.
I know I've heard where it sounds like someone is recording like in their kitchen or something like that, where it is not. There are no, it's all hard surfaces.
Yeah, kitchens are really bad.
Yeah. So just be mindful. Okay, what's the second tip?
And even offices.
Really?
Because a lot of people record in like home offices, but some offices, again, only hard surfaces. If they don't have like a couch and pillows, if it's just a desk in a room with like a window and walls, you're going to get a lot of echo. It doesn't matter how small or big that room is. So yeah, I would just throw in some soft surfaces, even if you have to grab them just to record the interview or the podcast, and then put them back in their place. Goes a long way.
Good to know. That's a good tip.
Yeah.
All right, what's your next one?
Next, again, turning off appliances, because this is something that sometimes you don't realize you have on, because it's that humming sound in the back. It's white noise, right? I love white noise, but it's not good for your podcast. So just make sure you turn off like any fans or ACs that are too loud. Dishwashers, big thing. Make sure the dishwasher is not running. Anything that can throw notifications at you, turn them off, or at least turn the sound off. And finally, one rule, not everyone knows this, and this was actually our Cash, shout out to Cash, in-house sound engineer at Idea Blossoms. He told me this, and I was like, why didn't you say that before? You should be this close to your microphone.
Wait, just like measuring it from like, okay, so for anyone who's not watching the video, we've got like, what is that, like an I love you or like aloha kind of sign or something? Like,
we call it hang loose here in Brazil. I'm not sure if it's right.
I'm an East Coaster.
Okay.
I know that's a thing in California, but like it's the tip of your thumb all the way to the tip of your pinky.
Yes.
So I'm a little bit further than I should be.
Exactly. Most people are. And you can see like mine is right here. And it's as close as I can get because I'm not at a proper desk right now.
Neither am I, which is part of my hang up. But now that I know that, that's an easy way to measure it. Ah, thanks, Cash.
I know, right?
That's an awesome tip. I really like this. I agree that as a podcast listener, and even with like writing show notes, like I've been doing over the last 6 months or so, you start to get pretty sensitive to what the audio quality is.
Yeah.
And the things that are annoying or the things that are good or what makes it a great listening experience for you. And I do agree, just like we've become really picky consumers of video, we've become really picky consumers of audio. We know what quality is. We know what we like. If something is easier to listen to and you're able to hear the person, you're going to go for a show like that versus one that sounds like it was recorded in 2017 on, like you said, someone's iPhone and they're just like chilling on the couch.
Yes, exactly. It's like an old movie. Do you have that feeling too?
Yeah.
When it's like the image is not so clear and it bothers me so much. And I know it's okay. It's just an old movie, you know, but we are so used now to that crisp video that it's really hard to watch a video that isn't. And I think it's the same, with audio, and like it's only going to go further and further that way. And that's why it's one of my predictions. And I think I said in the post, like the competition is getting bigger. So quality is not an option. And again, I'm not saying you have to spend loads of money just editing your podcast. You can just try to be more mindful during recording so you can still get good quality with, a very low budget and even, a basic setup.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Something that, and I would love your take on this, something that I've done before, especially with like my ads, if I don't want my podcast producer to worry about that, or if it's something that I come up with, like heaven forbid, on the fly, like I often do, and I just want to record an ad and then get it posted into Buzzsprout, something I will use is Auphonic. Is that something that you recommend to people just to kind of like, well, you tell us, what does it do to the audio?
No, Auphonic, I think it's a great option, especially for those that are running their own show. They don't have a lot of support or team members or anything like that, because it will like even out the levels of your audios. Make sure you sound, consistent throughout that audio, because sometimes, you speak too close and then you speak far away. And that is a terrible listener experience. So Auphonic helps with that. It also helps with, background noise and a few other things that are really way too technical for me to get into. But yeah, I think that's a great start, actually. One thing, the recorder on your phone is really good if you need to do that. Just make sure, again, you have soft surfaces around the phone, be very close to the phone, and you can record there and then use Alphonic just to make sure it's like crisp and nice. And if you have a proper microphone, then I would use something like Audacity or Reaper. I really like Reaper because it allows you to like monitor yourself. And then you get that extra layer of quality because it's a proper audio recording software.
I really like that. Those are good tips. And I didn't know about the other two sites. So that's really, really good.
And they're both free, Audacity and Reaper. You can download and install it, and it's free.
Oh, so it's like on your desktop.
Yeah.
It's not even a site that you go to. Oh, that's really cool. Because I know with Alphonic, at least the way I use it, it's just a website that I go to, pull in the file.
I thought you mentioned like post-production. A lot of podcast managers use it for post-production, treating the audio before going in and edit. I didn't even realize you could record there.
No, I'm saying I didn't know that you could record there because I just pull the file into Alphonic. But you're saying that you can record in
Audacity and Alphonic. It's confusing, I know, but they're two different places.
Right. And then was Reaper the other one? Is that what you said?
Reaper is the one that, again, Cash recommended to us because he actually studied this and he said it's a much better software, especially if you're going to edit afterwards. And again, free to use. You can download once. And the thing about downloading to your computer that makes a difference, it's when you record online, like using online tools, you're always relying on the internet connection, which can, be problematic sometimes. Tech is going to be tech. So if you can record, if it's a solo episode and there isn't a guest, it's just yourself, I would definitely recommend just doing on your laptop, desktop, whatever it is, using one of those tools. GarageBand is also one, Audacity, and Reaper. Those are the three big ones. And then, we can link it in the show notes and people can test it out, do whatever feels good and easy.
Yeah, that's good to know. Okay, so Alphonic, just to clarify for anyone listening, Alphonic is what I use after I have recorded. Let's say I recorded something in Zoom and I would pull the audio file into Alphonic on a website and it cleans it all up and makes it nicer to listen to. With Audacity, GarageBand, and Reaper, those are softwares that you can have on your computer and you can go into them and treat it like a recording studio.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That is amazing. Okay, shall we get into my probably least favorite subject, which is AI?
It's a love and hate relationship, isn't it?
It is. It really is. But I liked what you said in your post. I'm excited for you to explain it a little bit more to those listening of like what AI can do for a podcast, because you had some really unique takes on what it can do and how you can use it.
Yes, because I feel like all of us are trying to experiment here and there with AI. And especially in the podcast industry, there are a few very niche for podcast AI types, like the Script is one. They have their own AI built in the software now, which is a really good AI, actually. I've used it a few times, and yeah, it's quality. You're not going to like this.
I only muted myself so I could make notes for the show notes. It's not that I hate it. I feel like it slows me down. I haven't found quite the thing that makes it efficient for me. And efficiency is like such a thing. It's such a driver.
Okay. Yeah. It's because you are a copywriter, right? I'm not a copywriter. I work with copy, but I'm not a copywriter.
Yeah.
So AI is that like little kick in the butt that I need to get started instead of a blank screen that just makes me want to
go to sleep or cry either way, or cry yourself to sleep. Yeah. So I know that it's not my jam, but maybe one day I'll find something. And I'm not like naive enough to think that something you're going to say isn't going to help someone out there. So I'm only muting myself to make notes.
No worries. And a lot of people are doing podcasts themselves. So like these AI, some of them can cut you hours of work a week. But as I was saying, there is some like podcast focused AI out there, like Capshow is one. And there's the Script, which I really like. Anything that we use AI for in the Script, like show notes or post, it creates like a really good starting piece. And I've tried a few other ones and it's kind of clunky. It sounds very genetic and it just doesn't help at all. You just want to start over because you don't even know what to do with that. So it's been a lot of experimenting. But what I've starting to see, which was my prediction, it's not just using AI as a tool to repurpose, but also a tool to produce. So something that you can use for market research, creating episode topic ideas and talking points even. Writing scripts, because I know this can be very challenging for some people. You can use AI to help you with that. customizing guest pitches or sponsor deal pitches that you want to get out in the world. I know those can be also very draining and time consuming. So AI, it's not just for repurposing. They can be used in different ways. And I think it will be used in different ways. And that's something like I'm making note to start experimenting more this year because I definitely want to take advantage of that. I don't think AI is going anywhere. I think we can all agree with that. So the sooner you get on board, the better for you and your business. That's my belief.
Heard. No, this is great. So Descript and CapShow, are there any others that you can think of AI for podcasts specifically?
I think for producing a show, like I said before, to do, market research, episode topics, talking points, scripts, I think ChatGPT is actually a very good one for that. CapShow and Descript, they are more for when you have the episode ready. They are more for repurposing because they can grab that audio and turn it into any piece of content you need. Of course, you will have to review it and customize it. It's not going to be perfect. But like I said, for someone who's not a copywriter that might be listening to this and has a podcast, it is a great starting point because then you can just go in and do your magic, throw some personality there, but you don't have to start from scratch. But again, if you want to use it as a producer to like come up with ideas about, your listeners, your market, your episodes, whatever it is, then I would go to ChatGPT because it pulls from everywhere. And I think it's the best developed one out there right now. So I would use that one.
Good to know. So how long have you been in the podcasting industry? I know you've been in it for a while.
I've been in it since 2019, officially.
Yeah, I know. On the record.
Yeah. But then Idea Blossoms only started in 2020.
I can't even imagine what you've seen evolve in that time. I mean, AI wasn't even a thing back when you started. So that wasn't even in the conversation. And like you said, the audio quality wasn't as much of a concern. It was more of a, like you said, it was more of a nice to have, not a necessity. But like, what else have you seen evolve or come to fruition in those years?
Well, SEO has been huge because it was pretty much non-existing a few years ago. Not for podcasting. I mean, SEO existed, guys. I'm not saying that. It's just for podcasting.
Don't come for her.
No, don't come for me, please. For podcasting, there wasn't a lot. I mean, there were some best practices people were sharing, but there was no real data behind it. And now we can see actual data. There's more in terms of keyword research you can do. And I wish I could share this, but unfortunately, they just stopped services for lack of funding, which broke my heart.
Yeah.
But Voxelize was a great tool that up to 2 months ago was working, and it gave you like a full SEO report on your podcast and like which keywords you were ranking, which position you were ranking for, the level of difficulty of each of those keywords. It was such a fantastic tool. I cannot believe that they didn't get funded. But anyways, I couldn't do much to help.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's just going to be a matter of time until someone else, tries that idea and brings that back, because that, I don't think it's going anywhere. I mean, there's so much competition in the podcasting world now. That wasn't a thing 5-10 years ago. You could start a show and grow very organically with very little effort. But now it has to have a little bit of effort. So
just a little bit.
SEO helps a lot because people are searching. They are using podcast apps as a search engine. That's another thing I've noticed evolving. If you want to learn something, you either go to YouTube or to your podcast app. Maybe if you're a little older, you'll go to Google. But I still go to Google. But
yeah, I know, same.
If I want to like learn something on the go, like tomorrow I'll be traveling. Before traveling, I usually download some episodes of things I want to learn or things I want to, maybe some industry topics I want to learn about or get deeper into. I always download some stuff because I know it's easy. I can, listen on the airplane or waiting in the waiting room. So it really depends on the type of listener and the type of person you're talking to. There's a term that they use in the marketing world.
Oh yeah, like,
do you know?
Right, with like the learning style kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like some people are visual,
Mm-hmm.
Some people like to listen, some people like to read. So like
Mm-hmm.
those different styles, I mean, that's what it is, right? So some people go to the
Yeah.
podcast apps to learn something because they will get really bored reading, or they don't really want to sit down in front of a screen and watch a video. They just want to pop their AirPods
Mm-hmm.
and go for a run because it feels good.
Yeah. You actually bring up a good point. I'm curious because I love private podcasts. Do you have maybe like one private podcast prediction for 2024?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I'm throwing this at you on the fly.
I love that question. Okay, I do. So one thing, I think it's a really great tools for monetizing your podcast. If you want to really funnel your listeners into something that goes a little bit deeper into your work, that's where a great like private podcast comes into play, because your podcast is really where you're, getting everyone into like almost the top of the funnel. A lot of the clients I work with, their social media is really the top of the funnel. The podcast is the next step. But then
Mhm.
once they're in your world and you want to nurture, educate, and be like in close touch with them, that's when a private podcast comes in, because then you can get those emails. You can have that closer relationship, see their names and actually have a direct point of contact with them, because we don't know who's listening, right? We never know who is listening
Yeah.
until you receive a DM or until you get their
Hmm.
email. And with a private podcast, you can get their email, you can start that closer relationship. So I really like it as a part of a funnel. They start on your
Hmm.
podcast, then they want to learn more from you in a certain topic. And that's what the private podcast is for. I would be like very mindful and intentional about that certain topic. Don't try to teach everything under the sun in that one private podcast. Just try to solve that one problem for them. That will be
Hmm.
like the best scenario, because then it can be short and sweet and they can get that quick win and then take that next step with you, whatever that is, when you create the podcast.
Yeah, I like that. So for me, I like hearing of private podcasts being used like that, almost having someone come into your main podcast and then you funnel them into this paid one. So it's a little bit behind a paywall and they're getting just deeper, more one-to-one, more
Yeah.
actionable tips from you. I've
Mm-hmm.
also used it and I really liked this. And I actually created it because I was so frustrated with my experience with other programs. I created a private podcast for my training because I really didn't
Mm-hmm.
like, log into Teachable, log into Kajabi, log into this thing. Well,
Yes.
I'm leaving
Yeah.
my office and I want to listen to something while I'm on the road, but I have to like sit in the parking lot for an extra 10 minutes just to like remember what the login info was and go back to the
Yeah.
lesson and where was I in the lesson. It was just a pain in the butt to me. So I created the private podcast for my training. My students could come into the program, they could start listening, just
Mm-hmm.
like go through in a series if they wanted to, or they could say, I want to learn more about keyword research, so I'm going to go to this lesson or whatever. So that and like the learning styles that you were talking about earlier, that was one reason why I wanted to have that, because I knew that audio was going to be important to some people. So I love hearing all the different uses, the use cases for private podcasting.
I agree 100%.
Thank you so much for coming in and telling us about the predictions that you have for 2024 in the podcasting world. Where can people connect with you and hear more from you?
So you can go to my website, ideablossoms.com, and there you'll find pretty much all my links: Instagram, LinkedIn.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been really, really fun. I knew I wanted to have this conversation with you. And I'm going to make sure that I link to your LinkedIn post, which actually
Thank
spawned
you.
this entire conversation. So thank you so much.
It was a pleasure and it was really fun.
That was really something, wasn't it? Let that really sink in and guide you toward being the answer to even more Googled questions. Thanks so much for joining me this episode. You are the reason this show exists and that it keeps growing. Thanks to all those follows and reviews. If you know someone who could benefit from what was shared, send it to them. We don't do shy around here. If you thought of clarifying or follow-up questions while listening, you know what to do. Say hi on Instagram. Check the show notes for all the things that were mentioned, and I'll talk to you soon, friend. Okay, you get it. You know SEO is important, but no, you're not interested in learning another skill. Who has the time? But who are you supposed to trust with the task of getting SEO to work for you? someone who won't ghost you mid-project or treat you like a dum-dum lollipop, someone who actually wants to empower you and your team with all things SEO. Hi, yes, it's me, Brittany, and you are the person I created the SEO packet for. You're curious, you want to understand this thing better, but like only a little bit. You don't actually want to do the doing. This way, you get the key SEO stuff super fast, and you get support throughout and beyond the project. No more letting Google gift you the wrong SEO strategy. Time to put the right words in the right places and get found online by the right people. Find all the info you need below.